I'm going to talk a little bit about metal cross wedges today. Well, just metal wedges in general. This hammer, I put one in. I like to put them in hammers. This one I just restored, put one in. Very short little eye, and not a lot of wood to work with. I can't bring that down further, so I really need the expansion, so I put a conical wedge in it. So let's talk about those for just a second. You know, let's just go with, we'll find a starting place. And the starting place will be U.S. Forest Service's instructions in one moving part for how to maintain your axes. And you can find a link to it in the description. U.S. Forest Service says don't. Pretty much they just are repeating information that Plum did, but I don't know why Plum had said it. Plum had said no metal wedges in the eye. Just put your wooden wedge in. That's it. That's sufficient. Peter McLaren cemented that advice in the axe manual that he wrote for Plum in 1929. Just put a wooden wedge in. Don't put anything metal in there. Didn't explain why not. Because everybody who's doing vintage axes, if you've ever got one and you have part of the handle in, or you got the whole handle in, you'll see all kinds of stuff. In my axe wedging box here, I've got all kinds of junk I've pulled out of the tops of axes that people have put in there. All kinds of weird stuff that they put in there. And usually the metal wedge. Now, when I was a kid, I suppose for like first 50 years that I was hafting anything, I put the metal wedge in because it comes with it. This one came taped to this handle with that little metal wedge on it. It's just included. And because it was there, I put it in. I didn't know. I had never read the Plum advice or Peter McLaren's book, The Axe Manual, or knew anything about the U.S. Forest Service. And like I said, we'll use the U.S. Forest Service and tell you what their motive is for giving that instruction, because they explain why they don't want you to use the metal wedge. So they say, let's just start there. They say, wooden wedge only. Do not use metal cross wedges. Metal cross wedges for them are a problem because I'm trying to envision how they do this. I don't know for sure, but I imagine there's a shop that their employees are bringing their axes in for maintenance or repair. And the shop's doing it. And the reason I think that is because when they were talking about doing a whole bunch of handles, they talked about how they put the handles in a PVC tube filled with boiled linseed oil, let them soak 20 minutes. And they wrote, if you have a large number of axes to do. Well, that kind of suggests that they're doing them in a location where they're doing more than one at once. They're doing them for their employees, or maybe they're doing the original ones, hanging them, because they had some pretty strict specifications for what they wanted in an axe, that their they had a uniform set of standards for their axes, which you can read about if you go and look at the manual. Or Bernie Weisgerber had done earlier, he had done one axe to grind. And they said, if you put the cross wedge in here, you're breaking the tenon. And honey, I'm not going to give you a new handle every day you come in from work. So I want you to maintain the integrity of the tenon so that we can keep maintaining your axe. Because over time, no matter how you hang it, no matter if you use glue or don't, no matter if you use wedges or not, this is going to loosen. The metal and the wood do not expand and contract at the same. This is an outdoor tool. I can't control the temperature or the climate. So there's going to be some expansion and contraction, even if I really seal this, although I've got some axes that they have not yet moved, and it's been years. And I'm thinking that's amazing. Part of that's leaving them proud like that mechanical lock on the top. and the other part is just keeping them, well oiled. Keep your linseed oil on there. But what will start to happen is, as it starts to get loose, you're going to get this action. Once that starts, every time you swing it, it's going to get worse. Now the wood, it's got no choice. It's going to be compressed smaller than the eye of the axe in time. I may have driven that wedge in with 10, 12 little raps of a hammer and then cut it off, and that was tight and that was good. Now I'm going to go out and throw this thing, this 2-pound head, into a log. And you've seen Brian Two Bears swinging his axes. He puts a count of the swings that he puts up on a handle. What did he get? Like 11,000? Over 11,000 swings on that one? That's a lot of violence that's going on here. And inside of this eye, wood is not completely solid. It's going to eventually compress. It gets smaller and smaller. And once this starts to rock, that just gets worse every swing. And then you end up tapping it on, tapping it on, tapping it on. And the best that you can hope for is that you can prolong the interval between times that you have to refit your head. How can you prolong that? Well, I ran across a really good example here the other day when I was hanging an axe. Which one was it? I don't even remember which axe it was. Where I wanted to close the hang more. It might have been that one. Let's use this one. Look, I love the looks of this handle. It's pretty. But this was done a long time ago, before I got my preferences. I think the shoulders are too fat. I want to thin those down. And I don't like to hang at all. That's an open hang. Those of you who are new to hafting, when we talk about open or closed hang, you can probably guess what that means, but I'll tell you here. See how the head kind of points up? If that's my handle, the head's kind of pointing up. So you got the head going this way, you have the handle coming down this way. That's open. This is straight across, this is closed. When I bring the angle down, and the goal for a short-handled axe is 24-inch handle. This is 26-inch handle, 2-pound head. What the Forest Service, I found out later, they call this their pulp axe. We would just call it a boy's axe or a Forest Service axe. They want that in the middle. A felling axe, they want a third. So for a felling axe, that's about right. But for this little short-handled axe, they want that more closed, which means this head has to tilt this way. And the way you achieve that is you, right from the beginning, don't wait, because if I get this to fit just exactly the way I want it, this is coming down there really nice and straight already, and I get a nice sweet hang, and then I go like this, and that's what's happening. And I say like, well, that hang is too open for me, I want it closed. Now I got to mess up my fit to try to bring that down. So if I start in the beginning, knowing that I'm going to close this, when I go to hang this one, this handle's going on that head, I'm going to taper this. I'm going to start shaving this down and give it some room to come in here at an angle. So I'm going to change the tenon a little bit. But when I do that, it's going to leave a gap up here. Now that gap will be filled with the wedge. So now I got a problem. My wedge will completely fill this eye. The haft does not. And with all that compression and all that violence of swinging, this starts to get contracted. I'm going to start getting this. It's going to start to walk. Rock, 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 rock. And I'm going to have to keep tapping it back on. Now the way I can delay that from happening, delay it. You can't postpone a loose head forever. At some point you got to refit that or rehaft it. Either way. One thing I can do is lock the wedge in place. That's what these are for. These were not for, they were not primarily, you can use them any way you want, but they were not primarily for expansion. They were for locking the wedge and the handle together. And you do that by, you put this in here like this, and then you put this, it's cross wedging. You put this across it, and then the edges of this will lock into the haft. And that wedge now grips the haft. They can't rock. They can't rock as quickly as if it weren't. Why does the Forest Service say don't do that? Because when you do it, you're splitting the fibers in the handle itself. We don't care about the wedge. You can put that in 5 little pieces, knock it in there. You don't need the wedge to be solid. We don't care if the wedge cracks. So what they said, and it sounds funny because they just said, do not use these. Don't do it. When you do it, it's always kind of funny. A little cross message. But what they also say is, if you are in the field and you need a temporary way to secure this head better, and you're going to do this, I want you to put it alongside the wedge like that. Don't break this. Put that alongside. You can use 2 of them. You can put one on either side of your wooden wedge and tap those in. And when you come in, we're going to refit your axe. So that's a temporary fix. It's a Band-Aid. I didn't know that. I just always put them in because it came with the package. There is at least one reference, there's probably more, that said this was given to you with your wedge to use if you need it eventually. Don't have to put it in right away. Okay, so the Forest Service says, let's not be splitting this. Then they do another thing that is mixed messages. They said, maybe what's better than this is if you use this. You just told me you don't want me to crack the handle. Now you're telling me to put this in. And so you're going to put that in. Now I got a problem with these. This one at least goes down into the eye of ways. This little cork, it just goes at the top. So now if I left it proud and I put this in, that helps a lot because it's really going to spread that wood off. It's going to crack the wood in all directions and spread that out over the eye. That's helpful to keep that on tight to a point, because I need to support all of this with compression, not just down here at the bottom and then at the top. If I leave this uncompressed here, and I imagine that's what's happened with this axe, if I leave that uncompressed here and this is free to move and it's only being held here and here, then all of this becomes, this mass becomes a battering ram against that fit. I'm defeating myself. So I want this whole thing to be compressed. This would probably be a better temporary fix, in my opinion, than this one, but the Forest Service said it the other way around. And remember, Plum said, just don't do it at all. The proper thing to do with an axe that's moving, refit it or rehang it. Now, when I say refit or rehang, what I mean is I don't always have to take the head all the way off to refit it. But now it's going to matter, did you glue the wedge in or is it a dry wedge? Because on this axe that's dry wedged, all I got to do is trim this up, knock it on better, and knock the wedge down further. Okay? On this one, that's what I would want to do. And the way you refit it is as it's coming off. I don't know if I can get that to go farther off. Yeah, it's exposed. Is where the wood's exposed, I'm going to thin that out, and I just use a pocket knife. And not just take the curls off. You want to, I don't know if you can see it there, see that little ridge. You would thin that back because I want the head to come down farther now. I don't want it to stop on any kind of ridge. So we're getting that to come down more smoothly, more smoothly, more smoothly. I can even, like thin out those shoulders. You'd be surprised what just a knife does. Okay. All the way around. And then smack it on. There. Now it's come down further. Yep, closed up. Didn't close up all the way. All right, closed up. Good. If you glued your wedge in, you're going to have to use a metal wedge. Now's a good time to do it. And again, it's temporary. I want to fix this better, but I can put a wedge in there. Does it work? Didn't work on this one. This has 5 wedges in it. Do you see them? There's 3 conicals. There's 2 step wedges. And I cannot, if you are counting on these for expansion, I think you're going to be disappointed with what you get. This one will only expand down that far. So it's not taking care of the main problem, which I think is inside of this head. This one's longer. At least goes about 1/3 of the way in. But you get much expansion out of that? These were not sufficient to stop this from moving. And I really thought it would. But that's okay, because I really should put a different handle on this, but I'm going to play with this one. This will be a separate video. I'm going to close that hang, and I'm going to do it this way. I don't have much room back here, but I'm thinking if I take some of the back of this off, I'm going to take these out. These are not really that tough to take out. They pop out because they're so short. Oh, on Amazon I did find one, a triple ring one, that's longer, that's this long. And I didn't find my box before I sit down to do this, but I will probably use that. And like I said, this is not going to be for somebody else. This is for me. I'm playing, okay? I'm keeping this one. First of all, I love that head. You ain't getting it. And second, if I were doing this as, if I were selling it or something, I'd get a different handle. I think that's pretty. I got other handles. They're pretty. We'll just get a different handle. But I want to close the hang. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to show that I can get those wedges out. Knock this out. Taper this back off, and get that to come tilted down in here more. And like I said, on this one, when I do that, I taper this back off so I can get the handle to come in at it like this. It will leave a gap there. I don't want this going on. So I'm going to lock it, and that's my final point. I can use a step wedge to lock the wedge in place in that tenon, or people call it the tongue. I can lock it together with the tongue, or I can use glue. I haven't decided which one I'll do. I'll probably use glue. Okay, and then that will give me the longest interval before I have to do it again, and I'll be able to save that handle. If I can't, got more handles. Okay, got tons of more handles. There is another company that did something similar, and I think you're going to like this. True Temper. Was it 1958 when they first did it? 1959 they were, or is it 1960 when they finally patented it? They put vertical wedges in the head. So you'll see. Now, the wood slasher is most iconically associated with the eye ridges, but True Temper did it on a great number of the brands under their name. That True Temper was making axes with ridges in them. No matter, and I'll give you a list of known axe heads that have ridges in the eye. And what's that do? Generative AI or AI overview is going to tell you that it increases the amount of surface area in contact with the wood. Yes, it does do that, but it's easier to understand that it keeps your head from doing this. It prolongs the interval of axe maintenance by minimizing the potential for premature failure due to rocking. Locks it in. It'll give you a devil of a time if you're trying to close your hang on one of those. You better have that set up before you even start to hang it. If you're going to try to close that hang and there's ridges in there, because that thing, you're going to be taking this in, putting it in, taking it out, putting it in, taking it out about 50 times as you're hanging it, and grooves will wear into there. It's not as tough as you think to hang them, but it's tough to alter them if you started to hang on them already. You're going to lose that potential. And the second thing it does, I would use, if you're going to do axe with ridges in it, use a hardwood wedge. I only ever had trouble with one. Never had trouble with wood slashers, except one I was hanging this summer. Just had a devil of a time. It looked pristine. It looked like it had never been outside. It looked like it just came out of the factory. The ridges were so crisp and clean. So when I went to hang it, the bottom part worked fine, but toward the top of the tongue, those grooves weren't cut in there sufficiently. So then when I went to wedge it, they prevented the sides from touching the sides of the eye. And because they prevented me from the wedge started to fail up here, the wedge was breaking before it had expanded the tongue to touch the sides of the eye. And the only thing I could do to overcome that, knowing that it was sufficiently grooved here in the bottom, I could see the grooves were deep enough there, but to get the top to work, there was a hairline crack between those ridges, because that was a 6-ridge one. That was just too much for that softwood wedge to try to overcome. I had to use a couple of conicals to mate that up and make sure that I had good contact. And then it was fine. It's been, I believe, the person who owns it doesn't swing his axes as much as I do, but only has the one axe. So when she's swinging an axe, it's that one. As far as I know, still a good hang. That's just a tip. And that's my take on metal wedges, what they're for. It seems that if you go online and look at how people are doing it, you got people putting them in straight across. I don't know anybody that puts them in line with the wood, like the Forest Service said. A number of people say don't use them. They're Band-Aids. Don't use those. And then, of course, there are people who put things in the eye that are decorative, like a 45 casing or something like that. They'll put something in the end just for looks. We're not talking about that at all. That's a separate reason for putting something in the eye. That one is not for expansion or to fix a loose hang. The number one preferred method for fixing a loose hang, refit it or rehang it on a different haft. All right, so it won't be a separate video, but I wanted to show you I did rehang that head. And we have a closed hang. Yeah, it goes right in the middle. Closed the hang by trimming that back. Found the problem that was with the original. This is a beaver tooth 24-inch handle. It's going to be a much shorter swing radius. Wow, that's very short. But I found the problem was there is kind of a void in the middle. I was able to close that up. Don't know if you can see it. Let me see if I can get more light on this. That should be in focus. But I put the wooden wedge in. Then I took a chisel and opened that wedge and put another wedge right down the middle of it. That's an awful lot of wedge, but that is so tight. Not very pretty. Nope, not pretty. incredibly functional. Like I said, this will just be for me, so I'm not too worried about the looks. I'm more worried about how does it function. And I did it so fast I forgot to stamp it, but that handle comes out very nice. Like I said, that's the hang I wanted. Mission accomplished.